There's hour participation periods. In NSSE speak, it's always the year you do the survey. So for instance, in 2005, they call it NSSE 2005. It's the 2004-2005 academic year, which confusingly here at UNB is called 2004 fall. Right, when you look at our data, because our data is all based on the entering period. So it gets confusing. That's one of the things we're still dealing with, is how to reconcile all of our data, because the registrar talks about 2004 fall. We talk about 2005 NSSE. It's the same cohort. So, and as you see there, we did 3 years. I'll talk about that in a second, all in a row. We skipped and then came back in 2010. And then for a reason, we came back in 2011. And now we're going to stay in this cycle every 3 years. So 2011, 2014, and 2017 is the idea. So the first 3 years we did the survey was before I got involved, and the VP of the day said, okay, let's just do the survey. There was no publicity, no one was doing anything about NSSE. They were just doing their survey to see what we could find out. And interesting thing, which is not surprising, NSSE is very little variation between the benchmarks between the 3 years. So the top half we have the first year students, and the bottom half we have senior year students, and the 5 benchmarks. So you can see when you just look at each of these, there's very, very little difference, which is exactly what NSSE tells you. Things don't change a lot if you're not doing something to make a change. So we decided to make it easier to digest. From a benchmark perspective, we would just aggregate or combine our first 3 years, and that's UNB's base. So whenever we're looking for a comparison, we decide, okay, what have we done, or how have we improved, or have we gone down? We're looking at this composite base. So, and on this chart, which again gets busy, but I'll explain it. So the red is UNB Fredericton. The blue is the Canadian peers, which, are they really your peers? It's basically, that's a NSSE term. It's all the Canadian schools that participated that year. So okay, it could be anywhere from a college, like in a Campbell, to U of T. So we don't consider those our peers, but that's what you get stuck with. And then what we decided is to be something to truly look at is what we call the gold standard, or the NSSE top 10%. So we decided, instead of worrying about the NSSE US average or other comparison points, to digest the benchmark and say, okay, well, how can you score? Like, can you get 100? Can you get 75? What can you get? So, like, we try to always compare against the 90th percentile. So we say, okay, that's attainable. And you'll see for some of these benchmarks, in the case of student support campus environment, the gold standard is around 60. For student faculty interaction, it's around 40, around 50, I mean. So it gives us a better handle where we could be if everything was going tickety-boo. So that's what we've decided is what we're going to compare ourselves to. And most of the time we go, and we don't even worry about our Canadian peers. We just worry about ourselves and worry about where we could be. And safe to know, also they won't tell us who these schools are, but none of them are Canadian schools. So 90th percentile, no Canadian schools given the 90th percentile. And the other thing that is not, I'm not showing here, but one thing that some Canadian schools grumble, if you look at the Canadian average, it's always below the US average. And there's been some gnashing teeth, especially in Ontario, about that, saying, well, maybe we need to change the survey because we don't score as well as the Americans. And there's been people trying to decide whether the questions aren't fair to Canadians and going on and on and on. But bottom line is, yes, it's an American survey. Canadians on average don't score as high. And you can take that and take what you want from that. So that's why we're trying to stop worried about that. And for a potential, we're just looking and saying, okay, let's look at what we could get if things are going well. Any questions so far? Is that clear? Okay. So our path here really started, I would say the focus to start worrying about NSSE started in May 23rd, 2007, kind of a seminal date. We had an effective teaching institute here. We brought in, well, I didn't bring them in, the Teaching Learning Center brought in Julian Kinsey, who's the #2 person at NSSE, and they had a total focus at this Effective Teaching Institute, which is something we do among the school, at the school every year. Completely focused on NSSE. And so, how many people there? 100, or more than 100 people there, Ken? Yeah. And that was sort of the launch of NSSE for UNB. It was to bring in someone from outside who's an expert on NSSE to explain NSSE, try to get everybody's head around the data, and then sort of go from there. And so we did like everybody else. We had the survey and we kind of looked at it, and then where we really started to learn things, we decided, because we realized we could look at the SVSS data, start developing data by faculty. Because I don't know what your school's like, but UNB is a federation of faculties, right? So it's all silos. And we're finding that once you really need to look at the faculties to get any buy-in. So we've been doing a lot of that data. And only recently, NSSE can now provide you some half-decent faculty information. We started doing a lot more workshops and faculties, workshops focused at faculties. We decided to make things work, we have to work with the faculties. The university as a whole, it's kind of like everybody wanted to pass the buck. If we had a low number somewhere, oh, that must be somebody else's faculty is causing that. We just couldn't get any buy-in until we started talking about faculties. And then the biggest change probably came in 2009. We had a new vice president, Tony Secco, who loves metrics, and he just jumped on it. And he got a buy-in because we've been through NSSE a while to start setting goals for each faculty. So, measurable goals. And so what came out of faculty council was a group decision pushed by Tony that they would every faculty would focus on student-faculty interaction benchmark, and then respecting that each culture was different, each faculty, that they would pick another benchmark of their choice. So the idea was they somehow work on two benchmarks, produce some action plans, and then let's go forward. But again, putting the responsibility at the faculty level. And in that 09-10 period, this is where we sort of decided at a faculty council presentation, this is how we deal with our data. Most people, you start by comparing it with others. Your PR people grab it, and if you score really well on the benchmark, like one time Mount Allison did really well, so in their ads for recruiting, top 10% in this, they're using NSSE numbers for marketing, which is not what they're supposed for, but they started using them. Why? Because Maclean's is publishing them, and then they grab them out of Maclean's. So everybody focuses on the feel-good information, which gets you nowhere, right? It's like, okay, we're great because we did well in something. And then the evolution has come is to use the data to guide improvement. And that's what we're trying to do now. It's trying to use the data set and the results to say, okay, how can we improve teaching and learning at UNB? And specifically, in my case, UNB Fredericton, because UNB Fredericton and UNB St. John are practically separate universities the way they work. So there's been very little information sharing, let alone between faculties. We don't even share between the two campuses. So we're trying to improve that. So just to give you an idea of some of the things we learned when we started looking at faculty. So there's only 3 qualitative questions in the NSSE survey. And one of them is overall, how would you rate the quality of academic advising at your institution? So we did this one and got some results. So all I've done is combine just the good and excellent. And you can see here, so here's the UNB average. So on average, this is first year students, 71% of our students said they rated our quality of academic advising as good or excellent. And what you see is we have some faculties below the average and we have some faculties above the average. And this is how we started to identify we have some significant differences in how our faculties are doing things. And academic advising happens to be, in the last couple of years, a key item at UNB, so this has sort of fueled that. I'm not going to name the faculties in this case, but I will say what sort of follows the literature is the smaller faculties tend to do better or score higher than the larger faculties. So these tend to be the larger faculties here, these are the smaller faculties here. When we look at the senior year cohort, we don't get that, I should mention, you see you had some students, the 2 faculty had 100% of the students said, yes, it's great. When you get to senior year, a little bit more discriminating. So now we have some students not saying good and excellent, even in these smaller faculties. But the other change we saw as well, you see here, I tend to focus on the poors. So in our first year students, we were seeing 8% of our students saying they rated our academic advising as poor. By the time we get senior year, that's gone to 14%. So something is happening or not happening in their 4 years there at UNB.